here in the studio talking about Apple. And you know, Apple is one of those companies that's always trying to innovate, always trying to come up with that next level of stuff. And according to a report that we are hearing, Apple is slowing production by 20% on their iPhones. Now, some experts are saying that this probably means that the new version of the iPhones are on the way, while some are saying that, you know, maybe this means that Apple is slowing in sales. I mean, according to a report by CNBC, Apple is cutting iPhone output. Apple is cutting iPhone output in the second half of this year, according to Brian Blair at Wedge Partners, by 20%. Because, and they're saying, in his note, the analyst said that the firm believes that the company is reducing their smartphone by 20% because of slowing demand for high-end handsets globally, which recently showed up in poor sales of such smartphone companies as Samsung and HTC. Now, bear in mind, Samsung sold 20 million Galaxy S4s in the last 2 months. 20 million, that's 10 million a month, and Samsung said that was below expectation. So, I don't know what kind of expectations they have, but if I'm selling 20 million products in 2 months, you know, I don't know. That's some pretty good expectation to me. But, you know, Samsung is saying that's below expectation, and they're saying that the production of the iPhone, which includes iPhone 4S and iPhone 5, and the unreleased iPhone 5S for the last 6 months of the year, will now be between 90 million and 100 million rather than 115 million to 120 million because of the company feeling that, not feeling, but the reports that the smartphone market has slowed. Now, the company is not expected to reduce iPad production, however. As for the speculated low-cost iPhone, Blair said his firm believes that the device will be targeted at a possible deal with China Mobile. Now, according to the people inside Apple, he said, we anticipate this handset will launch in CY quarter 4 and believe initial production for the China Mobile model to be in the 10 million unit range for the first 30 to 60 days of SCDMA production. China Mobile currently has 730 million subscribers and represents the single biggest untapped carrier opportunity for Apple. And Apple's share per price is down almost 1% during the morning trading earlier in the week. So what we're seeing now is a global trend of slowing sales for smartphones. Samsung is saying that they are not getting the numbers they're expecting. They were expecting to sell between 15 and 20 million, I think, per month of the Samsung Galaxy S4. I don't know exactly, maybe not, I think it's between 10 and 15, not 15 to 20, 10 and 15 million in between in that number. So they're getting 10 million a month. They're saying that that's lower than they would have expected. And is there a decline in the cell phone market? Well, what I think it is that because the cell phones coming out right now, and Devin, you can speak to this because you just got the Samsung Galaxy S4. Because cell phones are coming out right now are just with the HTC One, the Samsung Galaxy S4, for the Apple people, you have the Apple iPhone 5 and stuff like that. And you have a lot of like the Nokia Lumia 1020 that's on the way, Nokia Lumia 920 and stuff like that. All of these phones are really super smart phones. In other words, they come with a plethora of options. You know, so Devin, do you think that this is a negative? I mean, with the Samsung Galaxy S4, there's so many apps on it right now, so many functions that you're saying you haven't even tapped into, 1 to 2% of what this phone fully can do. So is that a negative? Is that what's causing cell phone sales to slow? The fact that people just don't feel the need to upgrade because the phones they have are just so. I mean, the cycle, the longevity of it is just so good.
That's a good point. I think the cycle, I was thinking that just the other day when I got the phone, and as I started learning about it,
right.
I started to think, what will be my incentive to change this phone?
Right.
Down the road. It's gonna take some really fantastic stuff, you know, and I think they will have to shift their income stream from the actual phone sales,
right,
to application
app sales. Yeah.
That's what's gonna happen, and upgrades.
Right.
So they're gonna have to say, to get the newest operating system, like how Windows used to do it.
Right. Right.
They will upgrade the Windows
operating
and say for $10 you get. I mean, it won't be anything like how Windows was ridiculous.
Right.
Those people
Right.
just won't upgrade.
Right. Right.
Or they'll have to say you can't do certain functions without the upgrade.
Without an upgrade.
So
right.
Force it.
Right.
But in terms of
the technology,
is going to drop off.
Yeah.
Definitely. There's no reason to rush out and get the newest
right.
model, because you have everything in this one.
In this one, and even your last phone, it wasn't like you were saying, man, this phone is way outdated.
No.
You know, it wasn't that. It's just you you needed a phone.
Practical purposes.
It was practical purposes that was just a little bit more functional for what you do on the road.
Yeah, I needed more size to
right.
do what I needed to do, whereas, you know, Anne-Marie didn't, so I could pass on mine.
Right. And for her, that phone is going to, because she doesn't, technology is not, she doesn't need much in that world, so for her that phone is going to last.
Careful what you say.
I mean, that phone is going to last a good long while. So just what we're saying is, you handed that phone down to her. That phone gives her everything she needs to function. So she has no real incentive to say, oh man, I need this phone.
The only way now is if she gets tired of the size. And
right.
That maybe I should get something bigger.
Exactly.
That's the only reason that she would.
Exactly. And I think that, and the thing is, some people might say that, that's a negative in terms of, well, they're giving too much. And see, that is what Apple does. Apple doesn't give you everything. And they come up with these upgrades, and stuff like that, and so that's why they budget it out, and so people are like, oh man, Apple now has NFC, and that's been around. Just the iPhone didn't have it. You see,
they didn't put it in.
They didn't put, and they purposely didn't do it. It wasn't that they couldn't. They knew that they need something to force people to buy. So
navigation.
Navigation.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. You see, so just stuff like that. I mean, the Apple iMaps was, forget it. It was garbage. But I think that some of these things, just what you're saying, I think some of these things is what Apple really does in terms of trying to. They come up with some good things, enough to where, oh man, yeah, I want this, but not enough to where you're going to be so satisfied that when iPhone 5 comes out or when iPhone the next version, you don't want it, because there's some things on it. With the Android faithful, a lot of the apps, a lot of the functions, like the Galaxy S4, like the HTC One, like the Nokia phones that's coming out, these things are so packed, feature-packed, that when people get them, they're like, man, this is going to be my phone for a while. So only if the phone breaks or it's lost or something like that, they get something else. But otherwise, yes, phone sales are going to drop. Because it has to. When people have these phones that are just how do we put it? They're everything that the person right now needs. Then you're not going to expect to see them change their phone in the next 6 months, in the next 8 months. It's going to take a little longer. And so when these new phones comes out, when new phones come out, people are just not going to be upgrading as fast as they used to, simply because they know that this phone still has all the functionality that they're looking for, and plus they're comfortable with it and things like that. So Apple sales, Apple production numbers going down by 20%, I don't think is an indication that the new iPhone is coming out so much as it's an indication that the smartphone sales as a whole, is not the same as it was.
They think it's 20% on Apple or 20% across.
No, Apple. They're saying Apple has cut the production of their iPhones by 20%, and they're noting that to be They know that to be caused by the slowing of sales in smartphones in general. You know, it's not just Apple. Like, people just aren't buying Apple anymore or something like that. They're saying that the smartphone sales in general are slow. Samsung is saying that the 20 million units they sold in the last 2 months was below expectation. You know, and I'm saying that, to me, 20 million, I mean, that's, now I'm not saying that Samsung can't have, you know, figures and goals and stuff like that, but 20 million, you know, phones in 2 months, that's below expectation? Whew. What were they expecting to sell? 100 million phones? I mean, that's a lot of Galaxy S4s in just 2 months. We're not talking, you know, in all of the year they sold 2 million. You know, they sold 20 million, and they're looking to sell 100 million phones, and that's just here in the U.S. So what about worldwide? I mean, I don't know. I think sometimes these numbers can be inflated, you know, and stuff like that, because really, to me, 20 million units, and the phone goes for, I think, $600 something, whether you know, with a cellular plan or however, because remember, the cellular services have to buy those phones from Samsung, and they make the money back by selling it to you, whether in a plan or whatever. So Samsung has already made their money. You know, so don't think that because the phone is at AT&T, Samsung is still waiting for a check. No, AT&T had to buy that phone from Samsung for a price, because it costs about $200. I think it was $267 to produce the Samsung Galaxy S4. That was the figures Samsung released. So they're probably going to sell it for double that, you know, to AT&T, and hence the reason why at AT&T it's $600 or whatever dollars, because they have to make a profit on it as well. So Samsung already made their money on those phones. So, you know, I mean, they're not hurting. They've made the profit on those phones. So I think that we just have to wait and see how this thing plays out, how smartphones will evolve over time so that they can continue to be a profitable business. Okay. Well, coming up after the break, that super fast scan disc we're talking about, and unlock Samsung Galaxy S4 Zoom with a zoom camera has been launched, or will be launched, the 11th of July. That's coming up tomorrow. So all of that and more we're going to talk about right here on this edition of Tech Pulse. So just stay tuned. Well, actually, go get some water and then come right back.